let's return to previous program and fix a little bit of an issue using a loop. So in a previous video, we worked with this times table program, and this is what it did. I'll run this. So we pick a number, say 12, for example, and it displays us times table with all of those values, but we get this really unfortunate formatting here where if we get larger numbers, we get a lot of 2-digit numbers and it pushes things over, and then 3-digit numbers push things over even more. So what we want to do is we want to create a scenario that creates enough space so that all of this is going to be lined up no matter how many digits these numbers have, and even that we could go to 1,000,000 digits and it would still have enough space. So what we have to do is we have to first, we're going to open this up and I'm going to put extreme at the end. So we're going to save this one as times table extreme because we're going to use an extra loop to solve this formatting problem that we're having. So we need a lot more variables for this. So the first thing that we need is we're going to create one called space1. So this is the space preceding the first row numbers. So like if we get a 1, it'll put say like if our maximum is 10, so our maximum is a 2-digit number, then what we're going to do is when we put a 1, we want to put a space in front of it so that it lines them all up to the right. Now for the spaces within the table itself, we are going to do it this way. So this is the spaces required in the table. Okay. Now, we're also going to need a space count to figure out how many we need. So space count here, this is going to be a temp for evaluating spaces needed. And then we're going to have, we have to figure out how many digits things are. So temp for counting digits. And we're going to need digits, which will be the actual count. How many, make sure it's a comment. How many digits in a number. Okay, and the last thing that we're going to need, we're going to use the term padding here, which is a spreadsheet term for the space between cells. Because we don't want to mash the numbers like directly next to each other, or we won't be able to read what they are. So we're going to leave this alone. However, after we get the maximum value, we can figure out how much space we're going to need in the table. So every time we do this, we'll have our temporary amount of digits become, the number that we want to figure out how many digits it has. So they put in max. Now we want to figure out how many digits that is. So we're going to start with a space count of 0 because this is going to be for the far left column. So while digits temp is larger than 0, so we're going to destroy it as we go. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to put space count plus plus, and then we are going to divide it by 10. So what this is going to do is essentially remove the smallest place value. Because what happens is if you've got the number 42, for an example, and we divide it by 10, you get the number 4. That works because this is an integer and it doesn't remember any decimals. So you just keep dividing it by 10 until you have no numbers left. And then our space 1 is going to be equal to whatever space count this came up with, which is the amount of digits that it had. Okay. Next one here is we are going to determine the spaces needed within the table. So I guess this would be up here. Determine the spaces needed in the first column. Okay. So now we're essentially going to be repeating this process with different values. So now in the table, we're going to have much larger numbers than the maximum. We want to figure out max times max, because eventually you're going to square the number and that's going to be the last result. Now we're going to need a little bit more space here. So we're going to include padding. So the space count is going to start at 2. And then we're going to have our space table, which is the amount of spaces in the table, equal to whatever this came up with. So in the case of 10 being our max number, 10 times 10 is going to be 100. This will determine that 100 has 3 digits. So this will become 5 because it'll be the padding plus the 3 digits. Okay? Now, for the heading row, we are going to display, essentially, we're going to replace this. So we need to replace the width of a number here with, well, it's going to be larger if the max number is larger. We're going to need more spaces. So here's how we do this. For int s, because I'm going to use s for my spacing ones. Well, s is less than or equal to space 1. S plus plus. And then what I'm going to do here is I'm going to system.out.print a space. So this is going to be my line that'll just print me a couple spaces at the beginning. So let's take a look at what we've got so far. So if I put 10, you can see that this shifted over because it's actually giving me 2 spaces here before the padding of 2. So it did move that over. However, if I run this and there's only 1 digit number, so if I put 5 as my maximum, it's going to line up because it only gave me 1 digit space. Okay. Sometimes when you have only one element, you can do it like this. Print your loop out as a single line. Okay. So now what we're going to do is we are going to figure out for this here how much spacing we're going to need, because we're not going to just need 2. We need to increase this based on the largest value within the table. So the first thing that we need to do is figure out how many digits is I, the number that we are going to be displaying. And we're going to do it like this. So our amount of digits is going to be 0 because this is going to count up. Then we'll have our temporary value become I, while the digits temp is larger than 0. So we're using the same method as before to figure out how many digits it is. So digits plus plus, and then the digit temporary is going to get divided by 10 at every step. Okay, so when we're done this, we will know how many digits that I need. So I'm going to repeat this here, because this is where we're going to put how many spaces. But the amount of spaces is going to be how many we need for each cell minus the amount of digits in the number that we are displaying. So if we get 5 for everything and we have to display a 3-digit number, well, this loop is going to display 2 spaces because 2 plus 3 will give us 5. Okay? So now let's save that and run it. This will be, you know, getting closer to laying things out properly. Looks like digits. There we go. So this will be getting closer to our result here. Oh no. There we go. So if I put in 10, so you're going to see that the spacing is going to be much larger, and hopefully everything is going to get lined up nicely when we're done. So now we need this process in a whole bunch of places. Pretty much anytime we need to display a number. Oops, you know what? We don't need this one anymore because we don't need those extra 2 spaces. Okay, so you can turn that into a comment if you want. Okay, so now we're going to do the table rows, and we need this same thing. So before we display a number, we have to first figure out how many digits it is. And then what we're going to do is we'll have to put space 1 because this is going to be the number for the first column. Now in here, we're going to need to repeat that yet again, except, so you can select multiple lines and tab them forward. What we want is our digits temp here is going to be I times j. We don't want to find out how many digits I is or j. We want the result of the multiplication here. So we're doing essentially the same thing. And then what we have to do is we are going to run, oh, you know what? I'm going to take off this line of code because we don't need those spaces. So I'm going to run this, and we'll pick a large number. Let's go 12. So what you're going to see is now it all lines up. So essentially what the program does is first, we use a couple loops at the beginning to find out how many digits a number is. And that gives us, how much space each cell needs. And then down here, when we're printing a number, we have to figure out how many digits the number is, and then subtract that from the amount of spaces that we would need in any situation. Just to show you a smaller example here, I'm going to go, instead of 12, I'll go 5. So you can see that the amount of space that a cell requires is much lower because our largest value is 25. So this loop for figuring out how many digits a number is useful in a whole bunch of places, but especially for doing layout.